Hi everyone. We're shooting today the Mount series. So first of all, let's talk about why Mount. Why Mount is important. Why Mount is so common in Jiu-Jitsu and other combat sports. Well, for a very simple reason, because it's one of the very few pins in which I can control my partners with my legs, and so I have free hands to start isolating limbs and start going to a submission. If you compare Mount with side control, another very common position in the sport, if you think about side control is a pin in which you use your arms to control your partners. And that's why it's so hard to move into submissions, because especially in no-gi, as soon as I do things with my arms to start isolating limbs or whatever, it's easier for my partner to escape. In Mount, because I'm controlling with my knees, I always have free hands and arms to start isolating whatever the case might be. In that sense, Mount is very similar to the back, because the back is another one of those pins that are performed with your legs, and that leaves me relatively a certain freedom with my arms to start getting in and hunting for submission. So that's why Mount is so popular, and that's why Mount is one of the highest scores in the game, together with the back. So before we start talking about positions and like how to actually get a tap from Mount, we really want to emphasize general concepts and control. So first of all, something that, because this is a product directed towards beginners, it's very important to talk about stability, because very often beginners get to control positions, might it be side control, might be Mount, whatever the case might be, and then they sort of lose the position because they're not very good stabilizing the position. Now, there's a fundamental problem when it comes to transitions in Jiu-Jitsu, and the fact is that we often have very stable positions, but very unstable transitions. So in side control, if I have a very locked side control here with my locked hands, whatever the case might be, I am very, very stable. Whenever I move and I'm actually in Mount, I'm actually very stable. It's not easy to start bridging, he's carrying my weight and all these sort of things. The problem is always, especially for beginners, the transition between one and the other. So whenever I go to move to Mount, now he bridges and everything falls apart. And this is true across the transitions in general, okay? So one of the things we're going to be emphasizing when we move from side control to Mount is how to have a stable transition throughout the whole process, okay? So this is very important. Let's talk now about general concepts and general, not even Mount maintenance, but sort of general goal setting. There are three things that one has to keep in mind when it comes to the Mount position. The first one is the elbow position relative to my knee, or vice versa, my knee position relative to my partner's elbow. This is a perfect example of what we call a zero-sum game. What I want is my knee, inside my partner's elbows. Okay? So one knee and the other knee inside my partner's elbows. What he wants is his elbows inside my knees. At least one, best case scenario for him, two. And this is a zero-sum game. What I want is what he doesn't want, and vice versa. I need knees inside, and he needs elbows inside. It's going to be very hard for your partner to escape if I have knees inside. And it's going to be very hard for me to submit or just move to an improved control position if he has elbows inside. Now, understand that one of the reason why the Mount is so popular, and you can see this, for example, in MMA, is because I have free hands in MMA, I could potentially start striking my partner and therefore forcing his hands to drift up here to protect his face from the strikes. In jiu-jitsu, we don't have this advantage from the mount, and so my partner can afford to keep his hands as low as possible and to start hiding his elbow in, and next thing you know, he's out. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is dominating the inside position of my knee relative to my partner's elbow. So that's number one. Number two, just as important, this is another one of those zero-sum games that happen from mount, is my foot position relative to my knee position. So what he wants at all costs is to have my foot outside the line of my hip, of my knee. When this happens, it's going to be pretty easy for him to start catching my foot. A bit with the other leg, probably. Yeah, there you go. And next thing you know, he's out. What I want is to keep at all costs my feet, both of them, inside the line of my knees. Because now when he goes to trap my foot, there's nothing there. If he manages, and we're going to eventually look at how he can do that, to bring my foot outside the line of my knee, now that's an easy target for him to start going into his subsequent escapes. Okay, so this is another one of those zero-sum games. The third thing, and here we're moving more already into advancing to better control positions territory, there is a overarching dilemma from mount, which sets the goal for anything that I would want to do from top position. And this is the dilemma between pinning an arm and isolating his elbow above his shoulder. That can happen with one or two, or passing the arm, which means passing his elbow across my center line, which is the line that divides my body vertically. So that's a very simple dilemma. Either I pin the arm and I start isolating one or two, or I pass the arm across. When I pass the arm across, there's submission exposure, and maybe even more importantly, there is back exposure. Now, this can happen, we're going to look at this much more detail later, but this can happen proactively or reactively. It means that I can proactively pass his arm across, or I can reactively take advantage of his defense. When I go to pin the arm, he moves into a side position to protect his arm, maybe to bring it back to center line. But while he does that, this comes with a very high cost, which is the fact that now his arm is passed across my center line, which means now I can go and start going into my subsequent attacks. So very, very basic goal setting. Everything we do from mount starts from here, pinning the arm versus passing the arm, proactively or reactively. Understand that in no-gi, because you don't have access to strangles, you cannot really force your partner's arm, and obviously you don't have access to strikes, you cannot really force your partner's arm up quite as easily. With the gi, I can start threatening a collar choke, my partner brings the hands up high to start protecting the neck, and now I can start going into high mount, isolating his elbows even further. In no-gi, I don't have this option. I have to either pin the arm or pass the arm.